Connaissance, recherche,
sciences, mathématiques,
théorie,
physique,
philosophie,
conférence,
archéologie,
nature.
Bonjour, je viens tout d'abord à remercier les organisateurs de ce congrès pour m'avoir invité à parler de mes oiseaux. I chose to talk in English so that everybody can understand. I'm going to present my postdoc research which deal with fossils, morphology and higher level phylogenetic of modern birds. Just to warn you, my results are going to be highly controversial and give rise to occasional fights, even with my supervisor, Joel Crowcroft. Most authors agree that modern birds, Neornithes, are divided into two higher clades. On one side, Paleognaths, which include ratite and tinamous, and on the other side, Neognaths, which include all other modern birds. And inside the Neognaths, you have a basal divergence that separates Gallo and Cerei, which includes Anseriforms, ducks, and Galliforms, chickens. And on the other side, Neoaves, which include all other Neognaths. So the incorporation of fossil taxa into phylogenetic analysis often permits to elucidate hypotheses of relationships supported on the basis of extant taxa alone. And Paleogene birds are critical for reconstructing higher-level relationships of modern birds because they display combinations of morphological characters which are very important for assessing relationships between distantly related living taxa. So here I show how the inclusion of Paleogene fossil can help to revisit the early divergences of modern birds. So now I'm going to present you a very peculiar group of fossil birds which are called the pseudotooth birds or odontopterygiforms. They are an extinct group of large pelagic seabirds, and they had long, narrow wings, which were highly specialized for gliding. And you can see here the straight and slender wing bones. The wingspan of the smallest false-tooth bird was about the size of a gannet, and the largest ones were truly gigantic, reaching a wingspan of 6 meters. Which is 2 times larger than that of extant albatrosses. And false-toothed birds had a huge bill bearing tooth-like processes. We can see here some skulls in a lateral view and a part of mandibula showing these processes. And these projections were hollow outgrowths of the mandibula and maxilla and lacked enamel, dentin, and cementum. So false-toothed birds probably grasped fish and squid near the water surface. And these birds are known from all continents, and their fossil record ranges from Paleocene to Pliocene. These pelagic soaring seabirds must have filled a niche similar to that of albatrosses. Here I show a life reconstruction of an early tertiary species, which is partially based on the morphology of an albatross. The phylogenetic affinities of the pseudotooth birds have remained controversial. Some early authors noticed some similarities between false-toothed birds and ducks, albatrosses and petrels, and pelicans. Later, some authors considered that false-toothed birds show a mixture of procerariform and pelecaniform features, and they assigned them to a distinct order, the odontopterygiforms. In most recent studies, however, the false-toothed birds are referred to a single family, the Pelargonithidae, which is assigned to the pelecaniforms. And the reconstruction shown here follows this point of view. We can see that Osteodotornis from the Miocene of California is represented with a gular pouch here, which is similar to that of a pelican. Now I'm going to present two groups of putatively basal fossil taxa, which might be related to ducks and owls. First of them, the Gastornithids, are a group of giant ground birds from the Paleogene of Europe and North America. And they have been considered to be related to various groups, including rat-eyed birds. A more recent study proposed that Diatrima, which is among the Gastornithids, are a sister group of the ducks and seriforms, but this conclusion was reached on the basis of a very limited sampling. The second group is Dromornithids. It's a family of large flightless birds known from the Eocene to Pleistocene of Australia, and they were first regarded as rat-eyed birds. But recent morphological evidence suggests that they are nested within anseriforms, but in this case is also with a very limited sampling. So in order to evaluate the relationships among these enigmatic fossil birds, we present the first phylogenetic analysis that includes the Gastornithids, the Dromornithids, and the Odontopterygiforms. So the outgroups taxa used are three well-known non-Neolithic ornithorynine birds, Apsaravis, Hesperornis, and Ichthyornis. There are 33 in-group taxa, including representatives of major Neornithian groups, 158 other skeletal characters with all masticated characters ordered, and a branch and bone search with Pope and heuristic search with Winclada gives the same strict consensus which is shown here, and all synapomorphisms are non-ambiguous. So our analysis provides a solid hypothesis for the placement of the three fossil taxa which were presented earlier, and proposes several new hyoclades of modern birds. Due to a lack of time, only major results will be presented. So the false two-set birds or Odontopterygiforms are neither related to petrels and albatrosses nor to pelicans, but they are a sister group to the anseriforms, which comprises three extant families, namely the screamers, Anhimidae, the magpie goose, and Serenatidae, and the ducks, the true ducks, Anatidae. And this nucleate is based on the 16 new uniquely derived characters, including both cranial and postcranial features. So here I show a few features, cranial feature, which permit to group false two-set birds with ducks, and by comparison with galliforms, so a member of the chicken group. So, for example, the shape of the rostropterydoboid process here, they have a basal support in Odontoanserae, and it's not the case for the galliforms. The shape of the impression for the coronoid part of the external adductor muscle of the mandibula is in medial position in Odontoanserae, and here we clearly show that the condition is very different in galliforms. In Odontoanserae, you have elongated paroxypedal process that protrudes caudally, and it's linked to the parasphenoid lamina here by a ridge of bone. And we see here that in galliforms, the condition is very different. And finally, the shape of the mesethmoid bone in the Odontoanserae, it's very large mesethmoid, which shows a deep depression here for the caudal concha. And we see that in galliform, the condition is completely different. So I propose a few characters that support a sister group relationship between Odontoanserae and Charadriforms, or the shorebirds and the gulls. And it constitutes a large clade of water birds. And it also shows that galliforms are not sister to the Odontoanserae. So, secondly, we confirm the results of the landmark work of Murray and Vickerick. that the Dromaeosaurids, Mihirans, are nested within anseriforms, and this is based on 10 strict synapomorphisms. On the contrary, Gastornithids here are not related to anseriform, not at all related. Importantly, we provide the best evidence so far for a clade of flightless birds related to living seriemas, the Cariamidae here. So within this clade, the forest racids from South America are sister to a clade included Diatrema and Gastornithes, which are the Gastornithids. And this relationship had been suggested before, but with little evidence. So this is the first time it's proposed with a larger sampling. And it's also, in the future, it will be very important to assess the biogeographic patterns. It raises very important questions concerning biogeography, but it will be developed later. The placement of living serima here has been one of the most difficult in avian systematics, and recent molecular data suggests that seriema might be related to falcon, parrots, and perching birds, whereas morphology favors a link with griform taxa. But the monophily of this griform is highly questioned. So for the first time, we propose that the Cariamidae here are nested within a clade also comprising all birds of prey, including on one side New World vultures, and on the other side all these families included the secretary birds, eagles, falcons, and owls. So this is based on, for the moment, it is still preliminary, but it's based on the six strict synapomorphisms. Finally, I have found some characters that support a clade comprising galliforms and paleonas, including Tinamous and Rheas. And these results contradict the paleonat-neonat dichotomy, and which had been proposed a long time ago. And it implies that the neonats are paraphyletic, and that all these divergences within modern birds might not be the currently recognized one. However, this new clade has to be tested with a larger sampling of taxa and characters. But it is important to note that that classical skeletal character for neonas monophily and Gallo-Anseri monophily have been included. And in the context of the present study, the Galliform paleonas similarities do not occur in the three non-Neornithine outgroups included in the analysis, and they are reinterpreted as derived within modern birds. And this clade is based, for the moment, on 5 strict synapomorphy, including cranial feature and postcranial, including sternum, pectoral girdle, wing, and hind limb. So here, I do not have time for detailed comparison, but I show a few features which group Galliform and Paleognats. And Galliform are very similar, especially to Tinamous, and they are remarkably similar to each other compared to other neognats, here represented by ducks and force-toothed birds. And I won't detail, but this includes features of the coracoid, humerus, proximal liona, distal liona, and tibiotarsus. In conclusion, our work provides a solid hypothesis for the phylogenetic placement of 4 key fossil taxa, including the autopterology forms, the Dromaeosaurids, the Gastornithids, and the forest racids. Importantly, we show that the Cariamidae are nested within a clade comprising all diurnal and nocturnal birds of prey. When dealing with this bony-toothed bird phylogenetic enigma, we could suggest that maybe Gallo-Anserae are polyphyletic and Neoaves and Neornithes are paraphyletic. And this might constitute a first step towards an alternative view of the history of modern birds. Finally, the inclusion of additional Cretaceous Paleogene fossils will be very important because it will provide a framework for calibrating the diversification of modern birds. Especially the discovery of a fossil duck here, Vegavis, in the Upper Cretaceous of Antarctica has been reported in 2005. And this is the first Mesozoic bird, modern bird, complete enough to allow its phylogenetic placement in the tree of modern birds. So the ancestry-form affinities of this fossil would imply that the minimal age of diversification of the Odontoanserae is Upper Cretaceous, and the minimal age of diversification of the clade Odontoanserae and shorebird is older than Upper Cretaceous. This is so very important to test the position of Vegavis with respect to this Odontoanserae caradriform clade. Of major importance also is a possible relationship of multiple European Paleogene taxa, which were long thought to have some affinities with the Cariamae, including Idiornithidae, Elaphocnemus, Batornithids, and Amicinornithids, among others. So this group would be very important to include in the analysis, especially for a biogeographical purpose. So I thank you for your attention, and I hope you follow me.